Commander Jisoo watched the screens with growing horror. Another planet was dying. The blue-green world of Cathera Prime flickered like a dying candle before vanishing completely. Nothing remained, not even empty space, just a void that hurt to look at. "That's 12 systems this week," said Lieutenant Minho from behind her. His voice shook. "They're getting faster." The Void Devourers had awakened 6 months ago from wherever they slept. At first, nobody took them seriously. Just another alien threat in a galaxy full of them. The Zenthari had their energy shields. The Vox Imperium had planet crackers. The Ethereal Council could bend minds with a thought. They had won wars against beings of pure energy and conquered civilizations that existed in 7 dimensions. But these things were different. "Show me the Valdris system again," Jisoo said. The hologram changed. A beautiful system with 5 inhabited worlds orbited a yellow star. Time-lapse footage showed the Devourers arriving, dark shapes that hurt to perceive directly. They touched the outermost planet and it simply ceased. Not destroyed, not consumed, it just stopped existing. The recording equipment went mad, showing readings that made no sense. Reality itself was being eaten. "We hit them with everything," Minho said quietly. Antimatter bombs, dimensional rifles, psionic attacks that could shatter mountains. Nothing worked. The weapons just disappeared. Other scenes played out across the room. The proud warriors of the Kithran Empire charging into battle, only to watch their reality-cutting swords pass through the Devourers harmlessly. The Morphic Collective's shapeshifters trying to adapt, screaming as their very ability to change form was devoured. Psionic masters of the Thought Guild becoming catatonic after brief contact with Devourer minds. "The council is meeting again," said Captain Yeji from the corner. She looked older than her 30 years, exhaustion etched in every line. Same arguments, same fear. The Galactic Alliance had ruled for 10,000 years. They had medicine that could regrow limbs, computers that could predict the future, weapons that could crack moons. But against the Void Devourers, they were helpless children. "There's something else," Minho said hesitantly. Admiral Chen found something in the old archives, really old, from before the Great Forgetting. The Great Forgetting was what they called it. 5,000 years ago, something had happened. Treaties were signed. Entire species vanished from records. History books were rewritten. Most believed it was about resources or territory, typical galactic politics. "What did she find?" Jisoo asked. "References to something called the Human Protocols. Emergency procedures for..." He paused, struggling with the words. "World-breaking threats." The name sent chills through the room. Humans were legend now, if they were remembered at all. The species that had been cast out, declared too dangerous to exist among civilized beings. Stories said they fought with such fury that entire systems were quarantined afterward. But stories were all that remained. "The files mention weapons we've never seen," Captain Yeji said slowly. "Technologies that break the laws of physics, ways to wage war that we can't even understand." Outside their ship, another alert flashed. The Devourers had reached the Marian system. 3 billion souls lived there. The defense fleet was already retreating. They had learned that fighting only drew more of them. "The council voted," Minho announced, checking his messages. "We're opening the sealed archives, all of them." Jisoo felt her stomach drop. The sealed archives contained the things they had agreed to forget, the reasons for the Great Forgetting, and possibly the location of humanity. "Are we really that desperate?" she whispered. The screens showed their answer. 17 systems had fallen. 3 species were already extinct. The Devourers moved faster with each world they consumed, as if feeding made them stronger. Soon they would reach the core worlds. Soon everything they had built would be gone. "Check the quantum communicators," Jisoo ordered. "Find out if any of the deep space monitoring stations have detected signals from the forbidden sectors." As her crew worked, she stared at the void where Cathara Prime had been. Somewhere in that darkness, humanity waited. The species they had betrayed, exiled, and tried to forget. the monsters they had created through their own fear and prejudice. In their arrogance, they had thought themselves the pinnacle of evolution. Now, faced with extinction, they would learn if the monsters they had banished might still answer their call. The galaxy waited on a knife's edge, caught between two terrors, the devourers that would unmake them, and the humans who might be worse. Captain Minjay stood in the communications chamber, watching the alien dignitaries argue. Their voices echoed off the metal walls as they debated whether to wake their greatest mistake. "We swore never to contact them again," growled Elder Thexera, his forearms crossed in disgust. "They nearly destroyed half the galaxy. And now, the other half is dying," replied Senator Valenix coldly. "The Void Devourers have taken 40 systems. At this rate, we have months." The sealed files lay open before them. Pictures of burning worlds, reports of weapons that shouldn't exist, stories of a species that fought with such terrible creativity that even their victories looked like apocalypses. "The humans were banished for a reason," whispered Counselor Zenth. "They created viruses that turned thought into fire. They built bombs that killed ideas themselves. When we stopped them, they didn't surrender. They smiled." Minjay had read the reports. Humanity hadn't just fought wars, they had redefined them. While other species built bigger guns, humans built stranger ones. They weaponized mathematics. They tortured physics until it broke. They made war into an art form that other civilizations couldn't even comprehend. "Look at this," said Dr. Sunwoo, the lead xenologist. She projected a hologram showing the Battle of Xerion Prime. The humans were outnumbered 3 million to 1. They still won. The image showed impossible things. Human ships appearing inside enemy vessels. Soldiers walking through walls that their enemies couldn't pass. Weapons that fired backwards through time to kill their targets before the trigger was pulled. "They cheated," snarled Elder Thexera. "They broke every law of war, of physics, of simple decency, and it worked," Senator Valenix pointed out. "Until we united against them." The Great Alliance had been formed specifically to stop humanity. 57 different species had put aside millennia of conflicts to face the human threat. It had taken everything they had, entire fleets, reality-bending weapons, the combined psionic power of 1 trillion minds. Even then, they hadn't beaten humanity. They had simply made the cost of fighting too high. "The exile accords were clear," said Counselor Zenth, his voice shaking. "They were to be sent beyond the galactic rim, never to return, never to be contacted. Then we used their own weapons against them," Dr. Sunwoo added quietly. "The dimensional cage, the reality locks. We threw them into the void between galaxies." Minjay activated the quantum communicator. The machine hummed to life, its crystalline core pulsing with stored power. "If they're still alive," she said, "this is our only chance to reach them." The signal went out. It traveled through normal space, hyperspace, and dimensions that had no names. It carried a simple message. "The galaxy needs you." For 3 days, there was silence. Then the response came. The quantum communicator went mad. Readings spiked beyond its design limits. The machine screamed warnings as something impossibly powerful forced its way through. The alien stepped back in fear as the holoprojector activated. A human appeared, female, middle-aged, with gray-streaked hair and eyes, like winter storms. She wore simple clothes, but something about her made the room feel smaller. "Well," she said in accented galactic standard, "look who's calling." "You're alive," whispered Senator Valenix. The woman, her uniform identified her as Admiral Heejin Park, smiled without warmth. "Disappointed? We know what you thought would happen. Cast us into the void, let us die quietly, pretend we never existed." "The Void Devourers," Elder Thexara began. "We know," she cut him off. "We've been watching. Quite the challenge you found yourselves." "You've been watching?" Dr. Sunwoo asked. "Everything." The Admiral's smile grew sharper. "Every world that falls, every failure, every moment of terror. We've had front row seats to your civilization's death throes. Will you help us? Counselor Zenth asked desperately. Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. Around her they could see movement. Other figures, technology that hurt to look at directly, shadows that moved wrong. You banished us for being monsters, she said finally. You were right. The question is, are you desperate enough to release monsters to fight your nightmares? The room fell silent. The last transmission showed a human fleet preparing to move. Ships that looked like predators made of dark metal and cruel mathematics. We're coming, Admiral Park said. But remember, this moment. Remember that you called us. And when this is over, remember why you were afraid of us in the first place. The signal cut out. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for either salvation or damnation. Commander Ciano watched the scanners go crazy. One moment, empty space. The next, something was there. But his instruments couldn't tell him what. Sir, called technician. Jian, her voice tight with fear. We're detecting, I don't know what we're detecting. The main screen flickered. Space itself seemed to tear open like fabric, and through the tears came ships. Human ships. They weren't like anything in the databanks. The old records showed human vessels as crude metal boxes with primitive weapons. These were different. They moved like living things. Sleek, predatory forms that seemed to bend light around them. Some looked like they were made of shadow and stars. Others appeared to be built from mathematics made solid, their edges cutting through reality itself. How? Many? Siono asked. I can't count them, Jian replied, hands shaking over her controls. The scanners see one ship, then 10, then none, then thousands. They're doing things to space. Admiral Hyejin's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Seonho could see the interior of a human command ship. It hurt to look at directly. Corridors that seemed too deep, panels that showed information, in colors that had no names. Fleet Admiral Park to all Alliance vessels, she said. Stand down and observe. We're taking over. On the tactical display, red dots showed void devourers moving through the Cygnus system. They had already consumed 2 planets, turning them into nothing more than hungry emptiness. Weapon systems online, announced someone from the human ship. The voice was calm, almost bored. The first shot came from a vessel that looked like a twisted dagger. A beam of something that wasn't light, wasn't energy, just was lanced out and struck a void devourer. The creature, which had shrugged off every weapon the Alliance possessed, simply vanished. Not destroyed, erased from reality so completely that even the memory of its existence felt uncertain. Impossible, whispered Seonho. Temporal torpedoes loaded, another human voice reported. Targets acquired. 3 more beams struck 3 more devourers. But these weapons were different. The creatures aged rapidly, their forms withering as millions of years passed in seconds. They crumbled to dust that immediately forgot how to exist. A human soldier appeared on the view screen. His armor was wrong. It phased in and out of dimensions, showing glimpses of places that shouldn't be. In his hands, he held a weapon that looked like crystallized darkness. Reality anchors deploying, he reported. Around the battle zone, massive, devices materialized. Space itself seemed to solidify, becoming more real, more solid. The Void Devourer's reality-eating abilities suddenly didn't work. They were trapped in normal space, vulnerable. Sir, Jian said, staring at her readouts. Those humans, they're not entirely here. Half of them exist in our dimension, half in others. And their weapons. One human ship fired something that looked like a bullet but behaved like an idea. It struck a devourer, and suddenly the creature understood death. Really understood it. It died from the realization, its form collapsing, as its mind grasped mortality for the first time. Another human soldier walked through space without a suit. She carried a sword made of frozen mathematics, equations sharp enough to cut concepts. She reached a devourer and sliced through it, dividing it by 0. The creature ceased to make sense and unraveled. How are they doing this? Seonho asked. Admiral Park's image appeared again. 5,000 years of exile, she said simply. 5,000 years of being angry. Do you know what humans do when they're angry, Seonho? Seonho realized she was speaking directly to him. No, Admiral. We get creative. Her smile was terrifying. We had a lot of time to think, to plan, to imagine new ways to wage war. A human dreadnought fired what looked like a music box. The tiny, innocent device played a lullaby, and 3 void devourers fell asleep forever. Dimension manipulation online, reported another voice. A human ship folded space around a group of devourers, creating a pocket universe where pain was the only law of physics. The creatures experienced every possible form of suffering simultaneously and chose non-existence instead. Target eliminated, came constant reports. Reality bomb deployed, concept severed, timeline altered, enemy undefined. In 23 minutes, the void devourers in the Cygnus system were gone, not destroyed. They had never existed. The rewritten laws of local reality refused to acknowledge they had ever been real. The human fleet remained, dark shapes floating in space like patient sharks. Your turn, Admiral Park announced to the galaxy. Any other problems you need solved? The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone understood now why humanity had been exiled. They hadn't been afraid of what humans were. They had been afraid of what humans could become. General Sujin stood on the observation deck of the human command, ship watching stars die and be reborn at her will. Below her, technicians worked at consoles that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Status report, she ordered. Dyson Sphere Omega-7 is online, Lieutenant Jamin announced. We're harvesting the complete energy output of 3 stars, now. Through the transparent metal, Sujin could see the impossible structures. Humanity hadn't just built ships during their exile. They had built worlds, systems, entire sectors devoted to war. Stars were trapped in cages, their energy fed directly into weapons that defied description. The Void Devourers are regrouping, near the Andromas cluster, reported Captain Yunji. 800 confirmed entities. Understood. Deploy the concept killers, Sujin said casually. Human ships moved through space like schools of metal fish. They had grown beyond mere machinery. These vessels were alive in ways that biology couldn't explain. Some ships were actually parallel universes folded into ship shapes. Others existed as pure mathematics that had learned to hate. On the main screen, human soldiers prepared for battle. They looked human still, but wrong in subtle ways. Too many teeth. Eyes that saw through time. Hands that could reach into other dimensions. They had adapted to exile, becoming things that could wage war against concepts themselves. Sir, said Technician Jihi, incoming transmission from the Galactic Alliance. The face of Admiral Vexen appeared, his species' usual blue skin now pale with fear. Humans, he began, we're grateful for your help, but some of your methods are too extreme? General Sujin finished. You called us, Vexen. Did you think we'd fight nice? On the tactical display, one of humanity's fleets engaged a pack of void devourers. The humans deployed something called a memory virus. It infected the devourers with the memories of every world they'd destroyed. The creatures writhed in pain as they experienced the terror of their own victims, then simply gave up existing. That weapon is affecting nearby systems, Admiral Vexen protested. The inhabitants are having nightmares about wars that never happened. Side effects, Sujin shrugged. Would you prefer the Devourers? Another human ship fired paradox missiles. These weapons traveled backwards through time, killing their targets before they were fired, creating causal loops that hurt reality itself. The affected Devourers collapsed into temporal knots, existing in all times and none. Status on the Forge worlds? Sujin asked, ignoring Vexen's continued protests. All 27 are operational, reported Major Hyunwoo. We're producing new reality every hour. The Void's appetite is finally being outpaced. Humanity had industrialized. Warfare beyond imagination. Entire planets had been converted into weapons. Moons became ammunition. Asteroid belts formed the components of galaxy-spanning machines. On screen 12, human engineers showed their latest creation, a suffering engine. It was a planet-sized machine that converted pain into energy. Every act of cruelty in galactic history powered it. The device aimed this concentrated anguish at void devourers, who found themselves experiencing every moment of pain they'd caused, multiplied by infinity. "Sir," called Sergeant Yu-Jin from the Biological Warfare Division, "the evolution bombs are ready." "Good. Target them at the devourers near Sector 12. The bombs worked by accelerating evolution. Void devourers were ancient, unchanged beings. When hit, they experienced billions of years of evolution in seconds, becoming creatures so advanced they no longer needed to exist in our reality. They evolved themselves out of the war entirely." "Human Fleet Delta 7 reporting success," came another voice. "Void cluster destroyed using nostalgia weapons." Sujin nodded. The nostalgia weapons made devourers remember being happy. For creatures that fed on nothingness and despair, happiness was poison. They died from joy. "General," Admiral Vexine said desperately, "you're changing the fundamental laws of reality. The galaxy may never recover from this." "The galaxy shouldn't have exiled us if it wanted to recover," Sujin replied coldly. "You made us into this. You forced us to become monsters. Now watch what your monsters can do." On the main display, the battle progressed. Human reality hackers reprogrammed space itself, making areas where void devourers simply couldn't exist. Causality engineers deleted sections of time where devourers had won battles. Philosophy bombs forced abstract concepts to become weapons. "Emotional Warfare Division reports success," announced Communications Officer Jinwoo. "Void devourers in Section 7 have been made to feel regret. They're undoing their own actions voluntarily. The war wasn't just being fought with weapons. Humanity fought with ideas, with feelings, with the very foundations of existence. They had spent 5,000 years learning every way reality could be broken. And now they were demonstrating all of them. Remember," General Sujin broadcasted to her forces, "we're not just winning this war. We're writing a lesson that the galaxy will never forget. Show them why they were right to fear us." The galaxy's surviving civilizations watched from behind, their shields, terrified of their saviors. They were winning, but at what cost? Admiral Tehun stood on the bridge as the last void devourer died. It didn't scream. It couldn't. Humans had deleted the concept of screaming from its local reality. The creature simply ceased, erased so thoroughly that even its memories hurt to remember. "War status?" he asked. "All void devourer signals eliminated," reported Captain Seoyeon. "Full galactic sweep confirms 0 remaining entities." Around them, human ships began to withdraw. They folded back into dimensions that had no names, disappearing through tears in space that healed instantly. The massive weapon platforms, planets, converted into guns, stars caged for their energy, simply vanished. "Sir," said Lieutenant Do-hyun, "incoming transmission from the Galactic Council." Elder Vex Theron appeared on screen, his ethereal form flickering with what might have been relief. "Humans. Humanity. We are grateful. The galaxy is saved." "It?" Admiral Tae-hoon asked quietly. Through the view screen they could see the aftermath. Entire sections of space had been rewritten. Some stars now burned with impossible colors. Several systems existed in temporal loops, forever replaying moments of the war. The laws of physics were broken in 1,000 places, held together by human engineering that no one else understood. "We need to discuss him," Vex Theron began. "No," Tae-hoon interrupted. "We don't." Human ships continued their withdrawal. As they left, they placed objects in key locations across the galaxy. These weren't ships or weapons. They were structures that hurt to look at directly, made from materials that didn't exist in natural reality. "What are those?" asked Counselor Zenth, who had joined the transmission. "Watchtowers," Tae-hoon replied. "Reminders." The watchtowers weren't guarding against external threats. They were watching the galaxy itself, monitoring, remembering. Each one was connected to a network that spanned dimensions, recording every action, every word, every betrayal. "You're leaving?" Senator Vailnix asked, relief and fear mixing in her voice. "We never came back to stay. Admiral Tehun said. You threw us out, made us find our own way in the void. We did. We found something better than your civilization. Behind him, the command staff worked at their stations. Dr. Youngman showed readings that proved they'd eliminated not just the Devourers, but the very concept of what they represented. No similar entity could ever threaten this galaxy again. Humanity had broken the universe in ways that prevented it. But the damage to reality... Elder Vex Tharan protested. We'll heal, Captain Sion said simply. Given time. That's not our problem anymore. The last human ship prepared to depart. But first, Admiral Tehun activated a galaxy-wide broadcast. His image appeared on every screen in every language, to every species that remained. People of the galaxy, he began, his voice calm and cold. You called us monsters. You were right. You exiled us for good reason. Today you've seen what your monsters can do when properly motivated. Images flashed across screens, moments from the war, humans wielding weapons that shouldn't exist, soldiers walking through dimensions like doorways, ships firing bullets made of crystallized pain. We're leaving now, Tehun continued, returning to the void you threw us into. But we're leaving. Gifts. The watchtowers pulsed with inner light. Each one began projecting a signal, not electromagnetic, but something that reached directly into minds across species. These will watch you, the Admiral explained. Not protecting, observing, recording, learning. And if you ever need monsters again... He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. You know how to call. The signal changed, showing coordinates. In the deep void between galaxies, a place where human civilization had grown in ways that violated natural law. But remember this. Tehun's voice turned harder. We came once because the alternative was universal extinction. We won't come for lesser reasons, and we've learned much about gratitude from our exile. Human ships faded from sensors, leaving the watchtowers and scarred reality as the only proof they'd been there. Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt, but everything was different now. Children learned about the Void War in school. Monuments honored human sacrifice, carefully worded to acknowledge both their help and their terrible methods. Philosophers debated what humanity had become in exile. Scientists tried to understand the changes they'd made to reality. Artists created works depicting the war that often drove viewers mad. The watchtowers remained silent, but their presence shaped everything. Treaties were signed under their gaze. Wars ended before they began, because no one wanted to test if certain actions might summon humanity again. In the deep archives, records were carefully maintained. Every interaction with humanity was documented. Every lesson learned was preserved. The galaxy had called monsters to save them from nightmares, and both had changed them forever. Sometimes, late at night, staring at stars that burned with impossible colors, the survivors wondered if they'd won or simply traded one horror for another. The watchtowers never answered. They just watched, waited, and remembered everything.